we like the sheep because from a output versus input, they're manageable on a small scale.
Guten gardening, everybody. Welcome back to the second video in our series where we're featuring Hickorycroft Farm here in Canada. And in the second video, we're going to take a look at the different animals that they're raising here on the farm. All right, this is the second video in our series, and today we're going to be taking a look at some of the animals here at Hickorycroft Farm. And we're joined by Steph and Chris, the owners here, and they're going to take us through some of the animals they have. So, ready to get started?
We are.
All right, here we go. And here's one of the animals we'll be talking about in a little bit, but I think we're going to start with the sheep. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So sheep are the cornerstone, but how about this? In your time here, how many different animals have you either raised or tried to raise, whether or not you kept going? Do you know how many different?
Oh, I can go through them because I'm going to say it. At some point or another, we've pretty much tried everything. We've had chickens.
Yep.
We actually started with ducks.
Okay.
And up until pretty recently, we raised ducks for like 12 years, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
Quite a long time. We've had geese. We've had turkeys. We've had pigeons. We've had rabbits, which we still actually have.
Yep.
The first larger animal we got into was goats. And we had them for about 10 years. And then we got into sheep, which are now the cornerstone. We've raised pigs. Now we've done both weaner pigs and we've had breeding stock pigs, which is very different. Those are two completely different enterprises. And we've even had cattle, and we've also got horses. So we've kind of done it all.
Yeah. You said weaner pigs versus breeding pigs. I don't know anything about.
Oh, this is a rabbit hole.
Okay, well, I won't take you down that too far, but was one better than the other?
It depends what your goal is.
Okay.
So similar to what you were talking about in the garden video, of sort of, I guess, like your motivation. Are you doing it to be sustainable, feed yourself, better quality food, etc.? If you're just trying to get better quality food that you know what you put into it and how it's been raised, the weaner pigs are the way to go.
Okay.
Hands down. The downside to them is you're dependent on getting them from somebody else. If you're trying to be more sustainable, and I say that loosely,
More resilient,
Okay.
then having the breeder pigs makes sense, but the economics of it are completely different.
Well, see, this is the beauty. The sheep are this way, yes?
Yes.
This is the beauty of experimenting around with a lot of different things. You figure out which are going to be best fit for you, which are going to be most economical. I think that's probably a good word for some of this, because your purpose is to get produce from them in some form. You're not just growing them as pets, obviously.
No. And so they have to produce something.
Right. So they have to produce something. So finding out which ones produce the most, which ones you like, I'm assuming. And which ones produce. I mean, there's some good stuff too.
Fertilizer.
Yeah, you got fertilizer. That's a key. That's one of the keys to our quail.
You want to actually come up and
Yeah, we can get a little closer.
Okay.
Oh, you got the two horses in there too, yes?
Yeah, ponies are in with the sheep.
Yes.
Again, like I say, watch your step on all that wonderful fertilizer.
Yeah, that's no problem. We'll take it easy, but get in here close. Now, you've just sheared these how long ago? Some of them?
Most of them were May.
In May?
With Icelandic sheep, the one thing that a lot of people do is they shear twice a year because their hair grows so fast.
Okay.
So you can see, like this white girl here, she's got almost 4 inches of hair again already.
Oh, wow.
So their hair can get to a staple length of about 8 inches, which is what I find most of my spring shearing is. We don't do twice a year because I can't spin all that.
And you spin this into yarn, and that's something we're going to talk about in the pantry video, so stay tuned for that video. But basically, this, you said, Chris, you said Icelandic sheep are the cornerstone now.
Yes.
Why?
Well, essentially, because we have 38 acres, we want something that's a grazer.
Uh-huh.
And we've tried cattle. That didn't work for us for a variety of reasons. But we like the sheep because from a output versus input, they're manageable on a small scale. Even to have a flock as large as we do, a family of 4 like ours, we will consume the lambs. It's not, what's the word for that? The expense of keeping them over the winter, because we don't have our own hay field. We do buy hay.
It's all manageable.
It's manageable. It's very
Okay.
reasonable for what we get back.
We have a flock of 20 sheep in total.
20. Okay,
And
that was going to be my next question.
You're looking at roughly for us about $3,000 to keep that flock going, which Canadian, which is
Right.
the nice that includes ponies,
Okay.
which is nice because that's manageable. Even if we never sell a sheep, we never make anything from that. The
Right.
meat that we get back, plus them being triple purpose with the wool and now milk, makes it that $3,000 spent is all worthwhile, and it saves us money. Might not make us money, but it saves us money.
And I can confirm, after having tried sheep milk for the first time ever, and it was not separated from the cream, it was delightful. So, I mean, I'd say that's a really good investment. So we talked about this a little bit with some of the vegetables too, having multiple harvests. And you talked about the wool, you got meat, and you do all of your own butchering here, yes? No. Oh, okay. That's good to know.
We have. But basically, there is a local abattoir fairly close to us,
20
within
minutes.
20-minute drive. And we do take the sheep there, partially to keep that small business going.
Sure.
And also, just the way, I guess, regulations and rules are here, if we were to sell any, which is not our principal goal, but we can. And
Yeah.
it makes our life a little bit easier because
Yeah.
we do process the other animals ourselves.
Yeah, basically, condensing that a little bit, is we can't sell it if we don't have it butchered in a proper licensed facility and have it stamped. So when people come and ask if they can buy lamb from us, we can say, yeah, we can sell you some.
Sure. So you actually said something that made me think of another question, and maybe that'll allow us to move to some of the other animals here. But when we're thinking of the amount of time that is consumed with taking care of the animals, maintaining, the fencing, because I know you had a beautiful video where you built your fence, etc. What are we looking at in terms of time?
So I'm going to field that one because most of the time I'm kind of doing the day-to-day chores because Chris does work a 9-to-5 job. But I would say probably mornings I can whip through chores in about 45 minutes. Now that's just normal feeding, light cleaning, that sort of thing. And that's chickens, rabbits, sheep. But the one thing I would say on that is that you do have times of the year where it's quite a bit more than that, i.e. shearing time for the sheep, that sort of thing. I right now have milking also on the agenda, which does add a little bit of time. But for most part, I would say 45 minutes in the morning and probably a half hour in the evening. So what is that? An hour and 15 minutes.
So an hour and
test my
15 to an hour and a half? So really not overly, it's not a huge amount of time
Not
for
for the benefit.
for the amount of animals and the benefit. And what you're saying is basically when it's time to shear, for example, and so
Exactly.
May and then leading up to, well, how long does that process take? You've got 20 sheep.
So I do my shearing all by hand with the old-fashioned
Okay.
scissor type.
Yep,
So
we've
I
seen
do
that.
1 to 2 sheep maybe a day. So there's a 2-week period there where I'm probably investing 2 hours a day in shearing. And that's just something that has to happen. It has to be done. So you kind of, this is where I say, you kind of have there's periods of the year where it almost feels like a full-time job. And then there's periods of the year where you have time to do other things or take on other projects.
I mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but I'm going to link their channel in the description. There's tons of content where you can see all of this in action. And we're going to take a look at the rabbits now. You probably saw all these cute rabbits in the background, but what is the purpose of these rabbits? Now, I'm assuming these are for meat rabbits, yes?
Yes. Meat rabbits, basically primarily meat. Really, rabbits is probably one of the only things we have on the homestead that really is single purpose. You could get pelts out of them, but we tend to not do too much with that. But they are a very valuable, worthwhile, healthy meat source, and it just kind of supplements the chicken for another white meat.
Well, and I noticed a couple different breeds here, yes?
We're
Yes.
in the process, so we have.
You're getting the scoop before Hickorycroft tells
Okay,
people
I
what's
won't,
going
I
on.
won't tell anybody. We'll leave it slightly in the dark. How about that? But basically you're trying to decide what's best, or
We are doing the same experiment with the rabbits that we did with the chickens, trying a smaller breed and seeing if that is more cost effective.
okay. Well, I won't tell them too much, but I think that's really interesting. We have a few rabbits at home, but they're actually the only pets we have. We'll say that the only pets that we have are rabbits. But I know, even growing up, hunting rabbit, etc., that was really considered to be a good source of meat too. So that's fantastic. And then the chickens, you said the rabbits are really the only ones that are single use, but you use, well, that's not really true either though, because you use their waste.
Manure, yeah.
Right, so you get fertilizer out of them, I'm sure. Tell me about the purposes when it comes to your chickens here, and then I'm going to keep walking through and see how many chickens we can find.
So we basically, the purposes are simple. We do use them for both meat and eggs.
Yep.
We've gone through some experimentation, and I think that's one thing about homesteading or just raising food. It doesn't have to be homesteading in general, is over time you will change what you're doing.
Sure.
For a variety of reasons. And we made a decision last year to switch to a smaller breed of chicken, which still produces meat and still produces eggs.
A little bit smaller egg?
A little bit smaller, basically, compared to the chickens we used to have. But we were trying to go for something that was a little bit easier to work with, manage, and a little more cost effective, because bigger animals eat more.
Yes, yeah.
And while bigger animals
And
also
require more space.
grow
Sure.
bigger, which can give you more meat and other products, you sometimes have to ask yourself the question, is that worth it?
Yeah.
Even if it is bucking the trend of kind of what everybody else is doing.
So what are the breeds here?
These are all silkies.
These are all
They just
silkies?
are different colors.
Just different color silkies. So what is it about the silkies? I mean, I know you talked about the eggs, etc., but what about the meat of the silkies?
Well, I did some digging before we made our choice to switch to them, and I always say this wrong. Basically, say the name wrong, sorry. Breeds that have pigmented flesh, so silkies have blue or black meat, and it's not like dark meat that you would normally think of on like chicken legs. It's actually pigmented. Chickens that have that pigmentation have higher levels of this chemical compound called carnitine. That's probably not the right pronunciation, but
Works for me.
that chemical helps cells basically repair themselves. And so the old adage of chicken soup being healthy for you when you've got a cold, there's actually some truth to it. But a breed like silkies has like two to three or more times the level of that than a normal chicken. And what's interesting about that is birds have higher levels than mammals, and carnitine only comes from animals, so chicken's very healthy in itself. But if you can eat an even healthier chicken,
Yeah, healthy.
it kind of makes sense.
Okay, so this goes back to some of our conversation again earlier in the video and even in our gardening video. You grow healthy vegetables, well, why not grow the healthiest of the healthy vegetables? You eat healthy chicken, why not eat the healthiest of the healthy chicken? And so there have been a lot of changes here. You've made a lot of decisions as to what animals you're going to raise. A large part of that comes from what's efficient and how you're able to be more self-sufficient as much as possible.
Yeah, I was also going to add too, if you're raising animals, they need to be productive, they need to be efficient, cost effective, all that stuff, but they also need to be enjoyable. And I think we've definitely had animals in the past that are not enjoyable to us, and they might be to somebody else. We've also had animals that have been enjoyable but haven't necessarily worked out on the productive or on the economical side. So it's really this balance.
Trying to find the peak animals.
Yes, trying to find and what works for us might not work for everybody.
I think
it
that's
might not
really
work
good.
in every situation.
And that actually ties into another question I had, which, and I can say this from our own experience. So we raise quail. We have such strong restrictions around chickens in our area. We can have 4 hens, no roosters, 16 square feet of space per. There's a whole kind of restrictions. Are there a ton of restrictions for where you are here?
Where we are now, the short answer would be no.
Okay.
And when we do have some videos on this, where we live now, we live here because where we used to live, there was restrictions
that's
on
huge.
not
Which
only
we learned the hard way.
on not only chickens but
Sure.
also gardening and everything. And we kind of learned that the hard way.
So how many times do you think people make the decision? I mean, gardening during the pandemic and even after, I would say there were so many people that started gardening, but I can speak for Guten gardening. We would have loved to have had a bigger property. We would have loved to have lived in a place with no restrictions, but none of that crossed our minds before we purchased our property, X number of years ago. And so, I mean, maybe that's something that people take into consideration if they're considering raising animals, if they're considering gardening. before they go into that. I mean, honestly don't think that that's often at the top of people's minds when they're buying.
Check the bylaws.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely look at your I'm going to say municipal bylaws, or rules, depending on where you are. And
Sure.
I think that's one of the things here. So many people during the pandemic, we saw leaving the cities, things like that,
Yeah.
and thinking, I'm going to go and I'm going to buy an acre or 2 acres and I'm going to homestead. And that is a great vision to have. Unfortunately, townships do not want you doing that on that little space. Here we're required to have a hectare, which is almost 3 acres.
Yeah, just to even start that conversation.
To have a rooster or any type
Wow.
of bigger livestock. So
we understand, and I think I'll speak for all of us here. We understand that not everybody has 38 acres. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to show what is possible, to give options, to show some of the important factors that go into raising animals and the decisions as to which animals you want to raise. And I really appreciate Steph and Chris for helping me out and showing me this. This is the second video in our 3-video series. And as you can probably tell from some of the footage, the daylight is going away. So we're going to head inside for the 3rd video, which is going to be on the pantry. And hopefully we'll take a look at some of the wool too, because I'm excited for that. Anyway, I have the channel for Hickorycroft linked in the description. Go check him out if you haven't already. There's a ton of content there. A whole bunch of videos. If you did enjoy today's video, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, when you're with us, you are good to grow.